become the leader that AI can't replace?
So my interest, like really my North Star that guides everything that I do, is that I'm deeply interested in human potential. It's really about adaptation. And what I see in organizations is like there's a difference between adaptation and adoption. So many people think, oh, adoption, we bought the pilot, we're good. Like it's not adoption, it's adaptation. Are you really changing? It's really going to be a bouncy few years as we absorb this new technology. And that means you have to learn and change. As a leader, you have to be someone who creates an environment of learning and changing. AI is incredibly good at extrapolating any past data set. So good at that. But it isn't really great at understanding things for which there are no data yet, about humans needing to feel that they have agency and also belonging. Because like when people retire, whether they were CEOs or managers, or they never say they miss the board meeting. What they really miss is they miss being needed and belonging. So they miss the people.
This week on GAEA Talks, Nichol Bradford. Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So your area of expertise, I think, is very close to my heart, at least. So I'm really excited and looking forward to getting into this one. Just to give a bit of context for the viewers and the listeners, could you give us a brief background and where you've ended up today with a view on AI and experience?
Yeah, so my interest, like really my North Star that guides everything that I do, is that I'm deeply interested in human potential and specifically how to unlock human potential leveraging technology. So today I do that in three ways. One, I'm an investor. I'm a co-founder of a early stage venture fund, debut fund at 22.5 million. And we invest in pre-seed and seed technologies that I call human tech. And the second thing I do is I gather, and that looks like conferences and forums. And the one that I'm the most excited about right now, also in this context, is Human Tech Week. And human tech is tech that helps humans heal, grow, and thrive. Human Tech Week had, I launched this new brand in May of 2025, or we had a first one in June of 2025. And we had over 250 speakers, every one of them at the center of human and AI for health or work or cities, and over 1,300 attendees. And I have been gathering in this area for a while. I've been really focused on human potential in tech since 2014. I also had a conference called Transformative Tech and our event right before the pandemic. My event had over 1,000 attendees, and the audience is investors, founders, clinicians, psychiatrists, foundations, like basically people who are really interested in people and building for people. And then the last thing I do is I advise global organizations. One of the ones that people might recognize out of the groups that I advise is the Society of Human Resource Management. I'm the executive in residence for AI plus HI. So that's AI plus human intelligence, human ingenuity, human imagination. And it's an exciting place for me to be in group to advise and to do thought leadership around, like, what does it actually mean to have this technology in our life? Because SHRM has 340,000 members who take care of 362 million workers and their families every Monday. And so from that vantage point, I'm able to see around the world what organizations are doing, what they're trying as they bring AI into work. And that's really interesting too, because that's the surface area of where the technology really is rubbing up against humans and human agency, and people are searching for solutions. So that's my context. Before that, I was in video games. I actually lived in China. I operated all of the Blizzard properties for China, and that included World of Warcraft, StarCraft, Diablo. At one time, I mean, I did the localization for Diablo. Excuse me, it wasn't in mainland China, and I oversaw the entire sort of back end, and I did go to market of, a $250 million business. And then before that, I worked on the Activision Blizzard merger, was in marketing and brand and a variety of things. So touching consumer facing software for well over 20 years, and thinking about digital environments and you know places where humans and technology are really proximate. And then for my personal beliefs, really believing, like, how do we make this world really work for humans?
So you must have seen a huge change over the years. I mean, if we go back to uh, the Blizzard phase, how have things changed in your mind from the relationship of technology and people from then up to, let's say, 3, 4 years ago and today? How has that evolution of the relationship of humans and technology, especially within the context of business, how has that evolved in your mind?
Well, I would say one of the biggest differences over the last 20 years has been, technology is very immersive now. We're really surrounded by it, and about to be even more so. Like, if you think that there's a lot of technology around you because of the portability of your phone, it's actually going to go up, because voice is a more natural interface. And as the number of agents increases, eventually, like, yeah, I had some friends who were at CES, and it's like everything's got AI in it, like refrigerators, your scale. And the next thing you're going to see is that people are going to put voices on all of it. So we're going to be surrounded by things talking to us. Your car is going to talk to you. Your refrigerator is going to talk to you. Your house is going to talk to you. Your Excel database is going to talk to you. And so the biggest change has been sort of the level of immersion, and that's going to go up even more.
And I suppose robotics, I mean, CES was very much about the 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 dawn of robotics coming, which in reality, as you say, infused with AI, it's an evolution. I said on the last podcast that, especially within entertainment, it was Aline who created Tilly Norwood, the world's first AI actress, although I think very much misunderstood, because it was actually about human potential and what can a person with imagination use AI for, to effectively character development, um, to unleash imagination. And I think that probably a lot of education coming in with how we think about AI, even the definition of what it is. As you said, if it's around us everywhere and we're looking at what does it mean for us, well, I
Mm.
think it always roots back to the individual. I mean, in Eline's case, it's about character development, the universe, probably not too dissimilar from the computer games world. You have the concept that there's a huge amount of human work. The actual artifact may be uh, digital, whether it be a computer game or an AI actress, but that is the product of human imagination. If you take out the human element and the ability to tell stories, the ability to understand engagement, and obviously the games that you've been involved in, the company that have been making those games, that very much is understanding the audience, understanding how people are interacting, and creating entertainment, creating enjoyment. This is now moving into a different domain where it is around all of us, but in many ways it has been with the algorithms of Spotify, the amount of functionality on iPhones, the adverts that we receive, the automated supply chain with things we buy in the supermarkets. Where do you think humans can really stand out in this
Mm.
changing landscape?
Well, I think there's a couple of things is that we have a tremendous amount of biology that is trained on one another. Um, that sort of is specialized for one another. So um, the examples would be mirror neurons are what we pay attention to, and I think that just because someone can have an AI girlfriend, um, and there might be a lot of momentum around that because of social isolation and things like that. From a biological standpoint, um, we want and long to be together. And it also is only a recent phenomena that a human being could survive alone. Actually, for the most of our, the most of the the existence of Homo sapiens, and then the precursor hominids, like cannot survive alone. This is recent. And so we have a lot of biology that supports us being together. And I think when we, you know, um, really take the friction that keeps us apart seriously, I think people will, very easily, we can very easily get back to that connectedness, is one part. But one of the things I want to double click on and not get too far past is that um, one of the things that humans are really good at is understanding currency. And what I mean by that is, um, like one of the things I like to do is, I know you wouldn't know it to guess it, know by looking at me, is that I love combat sports.
Okay.
Oh my God, I lived in China. I started boxing. I've had two fights, and 0-1. I won my first one, and my last one, I really got to hand it to me. But I love combat sports. I love combat sport communities as well. There's a lot of honor in Bushido, and like they're actually really beautiful communities. It is not Cobra Kai. Like that's not what's happening. They're really clean, thoughtful, respectful communities. And so when I lived in China, I used to go to the Thai fight camps, amazing places. And in a fight camp, and you would see people roll in all the time. And so when a bunch of humans are in a fight camp, no matter what their background is, no matter how much money anybody has, no matter how good looking someone is, no matter what their degrees are, and I've stayed, at one for like a month. So you see like every day people are coming in within 2 or 3 days, the most focused on people are the best fighters, you know, and it just very quickly moves like that. And so, you know, human beings, you know, I would say like I think that the date was like last November. So it would be depending on when people listen to this, November, it was like maybe mid-October, early November of 2025. The amount of synthetic content and synthetic activity on the internet surpassed human content and human activity. And so, yes, AI is making a lot of amazing things, but on its own, making it on its own, it might be good, and maybe it's, tuned to, what someone is the most interesting, but it also has a little bit of, it might be beautiful, but I don't know, you probably have already seen it. Like if you notice your own biology, if you have any sort of training on your own biology, it's a little boring. Like it's beautiful and it's interesting, but it's a little boring. And even if it isn't, the moment I notice, like when I'm reading post, the moment I see that M dash, which is really sad because I loved a good M dash myself, and I really miss that I can't use it anymore. But it's like the moment I can sense that it's generated, I'm uninterested. I move on to the next thing, because are, we are very interested in each other, extremely interested in each other. So um, I think that I think that what will happen, like last night I was at a talk at a museum and there was an artist there and someone was asking her about how she felt about AI. And she was like, I make everything I make with my hands. And everything that I put in my art, I go and find it in the real world and I take it from something and I reconstitute it and I shape it with my hands. She's like, I'm not worried about AI at all. Like what I bring to it, because she was like, the artist, sees the unseen, speaks the unspoken. They basically are sort of metabolizing the field, and AI might be able to, mimic the output that we create, but as of now, it cannot access the field, that sense that an artist does what an artist does for society, and her stuff is very hand done. And so, what I think will happen is I think that we're going to orient towards things like there'll be a part of our attention that we give to really amazing things that are generated, and we'll be a lot less judgy about it. Like everybody's got an otter in a recording. If you remember Google Glass years ago, got destroyed socially because people felt that their privacy was being, violated. And they called them, if you wore the glasses and were recording, they called them glass holes. You know, Within 2 years, think of a meeting that you get on that there's not an otter and that you don't say anything. A few Europeans say stuff, but like nobody else does. Like we've just really accepted it. So I think we'll get a lot less judgy about AI content, the way that we're not judgy about electricity for the most part. Um, and I also think that we will get really clear about what matters, and that I think our human biology is going to orient us towards things that we're like, oh, that's human. And then something interesting that happened in China, which may or may not happen in the West, but I don't think it's a bad idea. In China, if it's generated, it must say so. And it's not legal for it to not say so. And it's enforced if it's not said so. Like they're serious about it because they believe, or at least what they said about the ruling is they believe that a society where people don't know that things are generated is not healthy. And they have the ability to make that mandate. And I think that is something at this point I sort of assume everything's generated. Um, you know, but I think humans want to be with humans. And then the last thing I'll say to just wrap it up is I think the AI girlfriends or boyfriends, and the robotic girlfriends and boyfriends, it's more of a of one, in our society we do not teach people how to have conflict. We also have a whole generation of kids that got helicoptered. So it's like they were never learned how to be like truly independent. So we don't really teach that, and we don't actually teach people that conflict can bring you closer. And I don't mean in a weird sort of like, you know, break up, and get back together kind of way. But like, conflict can deepen relationships when people know how to do it. So we don't teach that. And then the secondary part is that, we um, we're not paying a lot of attention until now to the amount of isolation that we have, and actually sort of like um, doing things about it. And we can't do things about it. So it's those two things, I think, left to their natural, humans left to their natural, healthy, uh, attributes. We want to be together.
Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense. If I were to leverage the experiences, the conversations, the relationships that we have as the group doing Gaia talks, and also from my own life, pulling in music and understanding what's happening with music. I've mentioned this on the podcast many times, but people are craving live events. They're craving being around people. the uh, personal development. It's meant interesting you mentioned combat sports. I was literally on today with former SAS Floyd Woodrow. His entire thing is all about personal uh, development, but from anyone. He's been with children at schools, underprivileged areas, helping them think, helping them work as a team and communicate. He's done that with world leaders. He's done it with all sorts of sports stars. That's part of a project that he's been developing and running. But all the military guys I know, all the special operators, there is a community which they feel they're part of. There's trust, there's loyalty. They have experienced adversity together. They've had to have each other's backs in certain circumstances. That human element brings incredible value. The distributed, very lonely nature of the last generation, especially looking at the pandemic era,
Mm.
I think is we're now seeing the very adverse effect of that time, the isolation. And I think it should be welcomed to have some challenge. But equally, 10 years of social media has most likely ended up in a position where does anyone really believe what they see in the general media and social media?
Mm.
No, it's very much understood. It's all sound bites. It's whether it's AI slop or not, the credibility has gone because it's just rubbish, short
Mm.
sentence rubbish coming out. Now, where does that leave people? If the aim was to own the attention economy,
Mm.
ultimately it ends up where it loses the credibility and you lose the attention because the thing that you crave is the thing it can never give you. It's looking in someone's eyes. It's smelling the surroundings. It's the fact that you can have interesting conversations. You can enjoy experiences together. Those memories are not something that can really be served in any synthetic form as such.
Mm.
The human experience is a human experience. I mean, in business, obviously we have a big focus on business, but we're interested in all walks of life of how AI affects humans, right? Because we all have jobs, so the business element is relevant. But ultimately, if we look at the majority of technology revolutions, well, even pre-technology revolutions, the name upon which things are given, whether it's the Internet of Things, more processing power, CPUs, GPUs, as it goes throughout history, is simply a utility to do things on a greater scale which otherwise were not possible. So in many ways, we have new tools for creating. We have the ability to achieve things which were not possible on a scale before. For example, if you or I were to read the equivalent of 10,000 reports concurrently, that's not possible. But if we understand what we're trying to achieve, it still is the human to say, if my job is to protect many others, this is
Mm.
my remit, this is what bad looks like, this is what I want to know. That filtering, that ability to assess things on scale, of course, there's a massive value to that,
Mm-hmm.
to redirect to the human, to understand what does that mean? Which other humans do I need to work with? How can I manage
Mm-hmm.
situations? It really comes down to all technology ultimately is by humans for humans.
Mm.
If you took humans out of the loop, the concept of capitalism fails because who are you selling to?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of everything, there's a customer.
Yeah, it's sort of like if you take if you take humans out of existence, or if you take it so that, like, if humans can't have love, then it's really sort of like a race to the bottom, because they won't have the ability to buy, anything that people want them, that companies want them to buy.
Mm,
Um, and so it's sort of short-sighted. But I wanted to before we move on, I wanted to double click on something that's interesting and exciting. The social media stats after years of social going up, they're coming down. Like people are just on them less, and young people are moving away from it too. They're starting to say, "Oh, this isn't good for me."
Mhm.
And so it's not, I mean, it's like, on the graph that goes like this. It's not like it's come down here, but um it's not going up. It's not plateauing. It's starting to move down.
But think of that.
Uh,
Think about that for a second as to why. Remember MySpace?
mm, I do.
A lot of people won't remember MySpace, but the cool people do, obviously. You look at every generation, it grew, it grew, it grew. There was MySpace, then there's Facebook, and then Instagram. I mean, we know it's a lot of the same company, so to speak, or companies. But the different generations say, oh, Facebook's for my parents. I'll use Instagram. And then it's the next and the next.
They're chatting.
Yeah.
They're on chat.
Yeah. But it's evolved to the point where I think fundamentally what humans value has changed. Everything
Mm,
that's new. I mean, remember when what my dad tells me when TVs came out, and he remembers in his town in the northeast of England, the first people that had a TV. And I mean, it's crazy to think, post World War II, people didn't even have cars in that town. So the first person that had a car, then first person that had a TV, and it was legendary when the first person had a color television. So of course you get this massive revolution that happens because you only had the cinema. You would watch visual things by going to a place. Then it was about convenience, but convenience comes at a cost. And it usually takes a few generations. So all we really need to do is look at history. What is happening and about to happen has happened before, but with a different label. And ultimately,
yeah.
people move from the the convenience on one side to the community on the other. And it's life
Yeah.
moves from over numerous decades. But it's like music and fashion. I mean, I see people in London saying, "Ah, this style is really cool. This is all the rage." And you think that was the 90s. Before that, young people say this is really cool. That was the 70s, and it just goes round and
That's so
round.
funny. Like, I think I might still have that. I just recently got a lot of comfort from a video that I found that was on the Fourth Turning books, which I have always meant to read, but I haven't read yet. And so it's sort of laid out, Western history in these 80-year um, tranches. And when you look at what's plotted in there, and of course, there's like the choice of the plot, like, the plotter is choosing like what's in there, but just for like big things, this war, this revolution, etc. Um, it was like pretty much I was like, huh, yeah, maybe. And basically it sort of said we're at the end of the last 80-year turn, and, the last 20 years of the 80 years is always crappy, and if you think about, just the overall decline in standard of living and stability and, things that, are much different than, 60 years ago, and what, at least, certain bases in both the US and Europe are sort of like saying that was the golden age. um, we're basically just a few years out of the next golden age. So the question is sort of like, does the thesis hold again? I mean, I do think what's so very interesting um, about these new tool sets, and also like uh, there's something about this level of chaos that's happening that is really so on one level there's a lot of chaos on the federal level in the US and across the board. It's sort of like, things that we believed were going to be true forever no longer seem to be true. And there's a lot of chatter about this week or last week at Davos. on it. But the other thing that I'm saying on sort of like a community level, on a city level, on a state level, the um, the response to the chaos um, is groups of people and organizations coming together to create solutions where they aren't waiting for anyone to come and save them. It's like, okay, like let's line up. Like let's get information. What are the challenges that we have? What are we trying to solve? Like I'm seeing this especially with my work around Human Tech Week. Like we have a partnership with the University of California system to provide science and technology to our work around applying AI to the future of health, work, and cities. For me, my coping mechanism is to build. That's what I do. I'm a creator. I'm a builder, and so when uh, when I feel anxiety, what I do is I create. Or when I feel frustration, what I do is I create. Also, when I feel joy, what I do is I create. And so, like I did Human Tech Week last year because I was going to tech conference after tech conference and um, not hearing people focus on people. So you'd go to a health conference and there'd be a lot of talk about the tools and the tech and the hospital data layer, but nothing around like, okay, we have this magical technology because it is extraordinary. It is magical. It's like unlike anything that we've ever had in terms of its ability to allow us to orchestrate ourselves um, and to remove constraints. And there's not a lot of talk about like what is the healing journey now that our capacity has changed so much. And, I have a personal thesis or a personal behavior that it's like if I complain about something for 3 months, then in the 4th month, I decide, am I gonna do something about it or I'm going to assume it's or I'm gonna see that is not in my dharma and to let it go. And so that's what happened with Human Tech Week, and I was just like, "No, people have to be at the center of this technology." And so I did Human Tech Week. And so, what's really, surprising me in a good way is that you know the chaos and the uncertainty is actually bringing the people together to partner and solve real problems um, in a way that I haven't seen in my adult life.
I think that's very important. But I remember it makes me think of when I was about 18, I heard Richard Branson say, if you spend, I think it was 11 or 12 con consecutive days unhappy, stop what you're doing. It doesn't matter how much money you lose, no money is worth it. Do something, because if 11 or 12 days, you may have a few bad days, you may have a lot of bad days, but that concurrent nature, observe what makes you happy, because effectively business, life, all, and I say business because that's where most humans spend most of their waking life, simply on a
Hmm.
mathematical basis. So if you don't enjoy going to and from and being at work, you're probably not going to have a very happy life as such. And that's going to have an adverse effect on the before and after work phase and on the weekends and the people around you. So creating a choice, and of course this is where it doesn't mean it's got to be easy. It could be very, very hard, and that's where the pleasure comes from. The fact that you can overcome things and that you can achieve things, and you can do so with people. You can uh, effectively do the equivalent of climbing a mountain. You don't do it because it is easy. You do it because it is very difficult. But the memory of that, the experience of people lives with you. And people observe, they respect the building of things. You probably may fail at building a lot of things, but you will learn how to succeed in doing so. I mean, all the fundamentals of business to be successful are derived through effectively leaders that are willing to do the things which others aren't, and willing to think in ways
Mm.
that others aren't. I mean, I heard I'm not going to name who, but I've heard some of the Davos talks, and it just struck me that trying to convince the world that what we all need is tokens, and actually the future currency of what's going to make humans happy and what we need to do is to earn tokens so we can use their product. I mean, I was having a chat with let's say Floyd earlier, and I said, imagine you replace the word token with hedgehog. Of course, what we all need is hedgehogs. It would sound absolutely farcical, but it's because the idea of tokens, which is effectively burning electricity, which makes them money. But why? Why why should be such a fundamental question as a human with anything?
Yeah.
Why do you produce a track in a certain way? Who's the audience? What emotion are you trying to create? If you're marketing a product, who's the audience? What are you trying to deliver? Where's the value? Why make
Yeah.
any decision? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And it's almost representative of we've had a period of time now where everyone could access nearly everything. And I'm not talking about ChatGPT, I'm talking about the internet. And it
Mhm.
was at a dinner before Christmas where Tim Berners-Lee was there.
Mm.
And he stated
He's great.
what his real aim for the internet was in effect anyone could put anything up there. They had their little part of the universe that was accessible to all. Now, with effectively the internet being hidden with a monetized layer on top, summarized down and tokenized, it's almost taken humanity away. But I think people took for granted the fact they could get everything. And because they could access everything, they effectively looked at nothing.
Mm. Well, I mean, I think that a part of the way that so I would say I I actually am quite hopeful, and it's because um spending time with founders and seeing things, and then what I mentioned before, um the constraints and friction of the previous systems have never been more malleable than they are right now. And so, um, so there certainly are forces moving towards consolidation. Like the future is not written yet. Like it's not completely like it's wide open. And and different players are on the move. But you know, where I'm at, like one of the things that I've done is especially for because I'm like in the midst of planning right now. And with my teams and my advisors, we sat back as we were thinking about it for Human Tech Week, and we said, for the health pillar, early discussions. You could easily do a conference, or you could easily do a gathering where you're like looking at what are all the newest techs and trends, and and how can you make things incrementally better and blowing people's minds. You could have like robots walking across the stage, giving out pills. Like there's a lot you could do. But then we sat back and we were like, you know, what is needed to like what is truly really needed to um, for the world to produce a flourishing society. Like really, if you took it back. And so the way we're organizing the health event is around it's called hope. So healing, like the healing journey. So rather than a health conference, healing. Um, there's going to be lots of tech, but healing, optimization, because there's a lot of that, prevention, and enhancement. And so that's how we're going to approach health. Because if you were starting from scratch and you said, what would it take to have a flourishing society? Well, people who need healing would be able to get it. And people, who needed to optimize things would be able to get it. And people who needed to prevent things, they could do that. And then people who needed to enhance things, whether it's vision or whatever, they could do that. And then similarly for work, we're focusing on agency, people having agency. And one of the things I love about our thesis that we have is that the way we're going to evaluate everything that we put on stage and everyone we interact with is to what degree does that tool, that process, that new thing enhance human agency. It's really like it's a very nice filter, because that's what this all is for. And so, a little while ago when you were, when we're talking about people selling tokens, and we started talking about if people are short sighted about removing livelihood, removing people from the system to which they create things that then they sell to more people. Like if you remove livelihood, then what happens? And so I think, I've been thinking about like, what is my definition of work? Because I think we kind of have to go down to like if you're renovating a house, you go down to the studs of what work is. And where I'm kind of at now is I believe that work is agency, because there's lots of psychological, like there's been, you know, an innumerable number of studies about, um, you know, about humans needing to feel that they have agency. And even if it's a level of, even if it's agency over, a kingdom that other people think is small, they still have agency within that kingdom. It's a very human thing that we need. Um, so we need agency, and also belonging, because like when people retire, whether they were CEOs or managers or like, shift workers, um, what they say that they miss, they never say they missed, the meeting, or they never say they missed the board meeting. What they really miss is they miss being needed and belonging. So they miss the people, either that they worked with or the people that they serve in some way. Because humans, like we are social creatures. We need to belong. And then the third part is livelihood, and so, um, the ability to pay for shelter, food, um, clothing, education, um, and health, and um, and a sense that your children will do all right. Like that's really what people need, and that has been declining for the last 20 years in Western countries. Um, so I I you know I am thinking a lot about what those future systems are. And but the end all be all is not so we can buy compute.
No, I would agree.
Like,
In effect, it's always been about choice. And if you think back to why have countries gone to war in the past, and let's look at World War One and Two. We can look at that, and we can look at the people that have given their lives. It was the idea of democracy was so we had choice. The reason that we do everything, we want to do the best for our kids, is to give them choice. The reason that we want to really achieve anything is so we can choose, even if we choose to just sit and watch the sunset. It's the choice. Whether you want to earn a lot of money, you're not interested in earning a lot of money, whether you want to create, it's all choice. That is the fundamental nature of being a human, not for someone to choose for you. Even if someone else were to choose for you and it was extremely to your benefit, that's not the point, and we see where that goes. If you look at privilege and entitlement, and you give people everything where they don't have to do things, ultimately it comes down to they want their own choice. And I think that's the one irreplaceable thing about being a human. Now, when we do choose, I think people have felt that a lot of choices have been taken away from them. And the magical element about AI, we can look at all the geopolitical elements, we can look at the compute argument, we can look at all sorts of things. But ultimately, I think the democratization of AI enables people that could not afford it before, or didn't have expertise, or didn't have access to figuring out how to achieve things. Suddenly, you could be from a rich background or a poor background. If you have a passion for something and you choose to do something, all of a sudden, you can embark upon a journey to create something. And usually, when you create something, especially in the work context, you're either contributing towards a common goal. And I think it was Steve Jobs who said a company is simply a group of individuals with a common goal. And that's to create something which other people value. I mean, it's people, 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 people.
Hmm.
And I saw on the masterclass thing you're involved with, uh, a title which made a lot of sense: become the leader that AI can't replace.
Hmm.
And I thought that that's a choice. The choice to educate, the choice to learn, the choice to create more value. AI is not doing that. AI is a tool and a utility which humans can
Mm.
effectively leverage to capabilities which haven't ever been there before, for better outcomes for humans.
Yeah, well, it's like, one of the things that is happening, and this is why I really advocate that we go down to the studs on what we think work is, because, really what work is, and I've really been every year I'm influenced by, like I find one researcher and scientist, and I really like, last year in 2025, it was Eric Jocelyn at the Stanford High. Like his research is in the digital economy lab. It's so good. And then this year, it's really Sangeet Paul Chowdhury. His affiliation is with Berkeley, but he basically puts it like this, and it just tied together because I range really far and I have a lot of data points, and so basically how he lays it out is that um, AI is fundamentally changing competition because the models absorb knowledge. It allows anyone to compete in your lane. So there's like no swim lanes are going to be honored. Product managers are going to become software engineers. Software engineers are walking across and becoming product managers. They might not be the best product manager ever, or vice versa. But if you're 80% of the way there, and you have this other expertise, you can get it done. So no one stays in their lane. Individuals don't, teams don't, and companies absolutely are not. Like there is another company who is not in your vertical, who is coming for your business, and they're going to be able to do that. So competition completely changing. The second part is sort of like this orchestration. And, because of generative AI's ability to allow us to take unstructured data and to make sense of it and apply it in different ways, the ability for people across different teams to orchestrate, and even people across different companies to orchestrate without ever meeting, is going through the roof. And so what all of that means is it means that there were constraints that existed, and we create jobs and roles around constraints because constraint points are points of value. And so, a lot of the jobs that are um, at risk is more that they are around a collection mass, that those tasks represent constraints that no longer exist. So there was a constraint around processing information. Well, now you can take, like you said, 10 reports and dump it in, and get a report of reports like that. So anyone who has a processing role, anyone who has a role that's right on top of a constraint that is no longer there, It's like we have this sort of like reflexive protect jobs thing where we're saying, oh, we need to protect jobs. Um, and protecting jobs that are around that existed because of a constraint that no longer exists. That is, if you're deciding how to spend your energy on the behalf of humanity, that's probably not the place to go. The place to go, and this is going to speak to, what we're talking about with leadership and what is uniquely human, is that when as the map is resetting, um, it's going to be very important for leaders and for organizations to be tracking where the constraints are exploding and then where the new constraints are coming in. Because those constraint points are also where value creation is or where new value creation is. And so AI is incredibly good at extrapolating any past data set. So good at that. But it isn't really great at um, understanding things for which there are no data yet. So, like, if you had an AI, like if just Jeff Bezos back in the day had an AI, or was using machine learning to, decide whether or not he was going to build Amazon, it wouldn't have said what he decided. It would have automated checker, the uh, it would have automated cashiers in bookstores.
Yeah.
But it's like, but something happened. The internet allowed someone who completely changed competition, allowed someone who was not a bookseller to come in from an adjacent standpoint and compete. And so that's the exact same thing is happening now. So an AI might say that, oh, that happens all the time, but it's not going to be able to say, that, it's not going to be able to predict the adjacent or the adjacencies because you don't even have to be adjacent to come into someone's swim lane. Like you don't. And so because of that, it's like what a leader has to do today is they need to be able to adapt. It's really about adaptation. And what I see in organizations is it's like there's a difference between adaptation and adoption. So many people think, oh, adoption. We bought the Copilot, we're good. Like it's not adoption, it's adaptation. Are you really changing how you're doing things given these other situations that have happened? And so adaptation, ideation, so creative iteration, because it's really going to be a bouncy few years as we absorb this new technology. And that means you have to learn and change. As a leader, you have to be someone who creates an environment of learning and changing. um, and people really like uh, growing. And all of that has to sort of happen in real time. And so, because of that, for me, what I'm seeing is being, people talk about sort of like just the way that society is polarizing. Well, one of the things is so like you and I have a lot of choice, um, but there is an incredible amount of friction for the for the working class, and the less money you have, the more expensive everything is. The less money you have, the more food costs. The less money you have, the larger percentage of your income that your shelter cost. Like everything actually costs more. They pay more for food. They pay more for health. As a percentage in their buckets. And so this technology is one of the best at reducing friction. Like that's what AI is like for me. I think AI is to reduce friction. Um, and right now, some people think when they think about removing friction, they automatically think that friction equals people. Like all these people who are like, oh, we get to get rid of all the employees. Um, Sometimes friction equals people, and I think organizations will be smaller because they don't need process roles because that constraint is gone. Um, but um, you know, often friction is systemic, and so it's like so for all of us who want a stable society, it's really about humanity, and all of us who want a stable society, we have to really track where the constraints have shifted, and also where the new value will emerge. And we should be building jobs around new value. And because that's the high ground, is around new value. But it's really going to be like having a flashlight where you can only see 10 inches at a time. And so I think the question for like, how do we cross this, like, like it's kind of a bouncy time, is it's like, how do we have the teams that are able to use that flashlight and see inches ahead as quickly as possible, because that's how we get to the value, and how we get to the value is how we get to the jobs for,
So,
for all sorts of people.
so,
Um, and that's what we have to do.
effectively, I, th- I think we probably have the same views on this. To take a number of things that we've discussed in this conversation today, it's the individual learning the ability or leveraging subject matter expertise, life experience, because that's the core of it. It's the ability to think so that you can recognize opportunity, communicate and act in an agile manner. Because as you say, as things change from how they were, and yes, AI is adopted more, and processes will become much, much easier. Access into information but becomes more distilled. It's going to create more problems. It's going to remove problems. It's going to change how things are. But we probably have a lot of people who are going to sit in a particular bracket that don't have the expertise and the experience, and sit in that little pocket between being new to the workplace through education, out of education, where they will be trained with this native technology, the understanding of AI. But anyone could, given the choice, really learn and take it upon
Mhm.
themselves to be the person that sees the opportunity, because there's going to be
And
huge
I
opportunity.
think it's going to be teams. Like AI, I think, is a team sport. Um, and there's some really interesting research about um, how to use it as a team, the what a team can do with it. So I think that the tracking of the value creation is going to be, you know, also like based on the military. I think it's going to be teams of like 6 to 8 who are, foraging and hunting together. And so I think I think the business unit of the future is going to be high performing teams, searching for value and unlocking value. And so, you know, pretty much all of like most of the performance management is about individual contributors. And maybe there's one little line on there about like how you are on a team, but the actual science in business, the science of team assessment, I think we better really we need to go. We all need to go and talk to our military friends because they've just done it for a long time, and our team sport friends, and pull that stuff over into business. Because the thing that we have, CI, is that whatever dysfunction you have on your team, it extrapolates it. So you have amazing teams and you have terrible teams, but most are in the mediocre middle. And they're mediocre because they've got a few dysfunctional threads, but not a ton. And some research has shown, like, if a team is task based, and you've noticed, like, when you prompt, one word changes things dramatically. The same thing. So if you have a team that gets together and they get things done, and they're task based, then they just become exponentially task based, and they exponentially get things done. And that sounds good on the surface, but when the map itself is changing, when mountains are becoming valleys and fields are becoming oceans and oceans are becoming deserts, a task based team, could task you under a mountain.
Mm.
And so it's really about high performing teams who are able to, identify value, and to go back to what you said. like the very human thing is like, how does a human, how does a leader, how does a person on that team become the very best contributor they can be to that team so they can use AI together in a way that creates value?
So the future in many ways is for normal people in the real world to think and learn to operate like elite special operators and within a team environment. And
Team.
in
Yeah,
teams of
it's gonna become all about us together. Um, and that is what I've been seeing because of the bounciness on the federal level, and just like on the global level, people in communities, in cities, in organizations are like, you know what? If we want it, we have to build it. If we want it, we have to do it together. And that is like, I love that because I think that's where the answer is. That's how we get through this is together.
yeah. Well, Nicole, it's been an hour. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Any last final thoughts?
Well, one, I realized that it's like you and I could have talked for like probably we could have done a Joe Rogan 5-hour conversation. It's
No doubt.
easy.
But
So
we'll do that
thank you
in
so much
person when I'm in the
for
US
thank
next.
you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Excellent. Wonderful. We appreciate it. And yeah, we'll speak to you soon.